That's the line people throw around for cheap drama, right? But with Pauley Perrette, it actually fits. For years, everyone thought they knew why the woman who played Abby Sciuto, the caffeine-powered lab coat legend, walked away from one of the biggest shows on television. The official tale sounded neat and tidy. She wanted a quieter life, but dig a little deeper into old interviews, her own public posts, and what crew members whispered off the record, and another picture starts to form. A messier one, a scarier one, and a far more human one. Today we're going to talk about how Pauley Perrette went from drifting kid to crime-obsessed scholar to unlikely TV icon, how fear and courage collided behind the scenes, and how, when the cameras stopped, she chose peace, purpose, and, no surprise, dogs. Now, take a breath with me, because this story doesn't start with spotlights. It starts with a girl who never unpacked her suitcase. Pauley Perrette came into the world on March 27, 1969 in New Orleans, but hometown was a moving target. Her dad's work on the railroad meant boxes never stayed sealed for long. By her teens, she'd bounced through more zip codes than most families see in a decade. 14 places, give or take, each one a quick lesson in how to adapt fast, blend in, read the room, and start over before you've even figured out where the light switches are. Louisiana put her name on the birth certificate, but ask her what felt like home, and the answer landed squarely in Alabama. The South was her classroom. And what it taught her, flexibility, empathy, a radar for people, would become rocket fuel later, on and off set. Way before anyone knew Pauley Perrette as Abby Sciuto, she had her eye on crime, not committing it, understanding it. While other kids were comparing sports cards or doodling in notebooks, she devoured real-world stories about bad actors and the science that exposes them. A rock band? Sure, she could picture that. Working with animals? Absolutely. But what really pulled her was criminology, the why behind people who hurt others without blinking. That question burrowed in and stayed there, so she chased it. After high school, Pauley Perrette stacked degrees like she was building a case file: sociology, psychology, criminology. Then she packed up for New York and John Jay College of Criminal Justice, yes, that John Jay, working toward a master's while juggling enough odd jobs to make you tired just hearing about them. Picture the scene: underground clubs, a mohawk, combat boots, bartending to pay tuition, passing out flyers on skates, doing kitchen shifts on dinner cruises. It wasn't glamorous, but it was an education of a different kind. Class by day, human behavior lab by night. And then life through a haymaker. In Atlanta in the 1980s, Pauley Perrette was violently mugged. We don't have a frame-by-frame breakdown, nor do we need one, but the impact was deep. Instead of letting the trauma calcify, she turned it into motive. She doubled down on speaking up for victims, using whatever reach she had to point a spotlight where it mattered. That moment didn't define her, but it did redirect her. Here's another curveball. She didn't grow up a rebel. Strict church rules, limited TV, a picture-perfect look, blonde pigtails, polite smile, and then, at 15, she got her first tattoo. In that conservative world, it was like setting off a firecracker in a library. Over time, she added around 20 pieces of ink, each a small manifesto that said, "I won't fit into your box." Those tattoos weren't just decoration, they were boundary lines she drew for herself, a way of claiming space in a life that kept shifting beneath her feet. By the time Pauley Perrette landed in Los Angeles in the 1990s, she had $71 to her name and a stubborn refusal to give up. She slept on floors, took any job that kept the lights on, even did voice work for dial-in music services. Acting wasn't some shining star she'd been chasing. It was a lane she stumbled into when criminology couldn't cover the rent. And in one of those only in LA moments, she was out walking dogs, $5 a day scraping by, when she rescued a pit bull off the street. She named her Cece. If you want to understand later chapters why a certain on-set dog issue hit so hard, start there. Cece wasn't just a pet. She was family, a piece of Pauley Perrette's heart with paws. Her first real TV break didn't come through a fancy agent or a big audition. She overheard someone in a coffee shop talking about a casting call, showed up, and snagged a small recurring bit on a sitcom. That turned into other little gigs, pop-ins on shows like Frasier-era comedy and legal drama territory, and then a minor role in the film Almost Famous, working alongside names like Philip Seymour Hoffman and directed by Cameron Crowe. These weren't splashy credits, but they were stepping stones. Slowly, steadily, her reel started to look like a career. Then came 2003, the audition room, the moment. Pauley Perrette walked in wearing baggy jeans, sneakers, and a plain t-shirt, very much not the goth lab queen everyone would soon meet, and the show's creator, Donald P. Belisario, reportedly clocked it right away. "That's her," he said, not because she dressed like Abby Sciuto, but because the energy fit, caffeinated speed, quick warmth, a hug-first friendliness you can't fake. A friend, Kevin Lawson, backed that up years later. Pauley Perrette wasn't trying to play Abby. There was just overlap between who she was and what the character needed. And overnight, everything changed. Abby Sciuto didn't just join a crime team, she became the team's pulse. No official scoreboards can rank fan favorite with scientific precision, but come on, you saw it. The calf pow, cups, the pigtails, the boots, the black-on-black look offset by a heart of absolute gold. She made science feel like magic without disrespecting it. The writers noticed that gravitational pull and kept writing to it, episode after episode, year after year. And while numbers can be dry, here's one. By the time Pauley Perrette left, she'd racked up hundreds of episodes over 15 seasons. That's not just longevity, that's cultural imprint. And about that set legend, Bert the Hippo, a purple, fart sound-making stuffed animal that somehow caused more chaos behind the scenes than any A-lister ever could. People wanted to borrow Bert. People hid Bert. Eventually, someone had to lock him up so he wouldn't wander off. On screen, he punctured heavy scenes with humor. Off-screen, he became a mascot. You can't script that kind of weird, and that's why it worked. Now, here's the thing I love. Pauley Perrette didn't treat the lab tech jargon like filler. She trained with real forensic folks, DNA, ballistics, lab protocols. She put in the homework so Abby Sciuto sounded like someone who knew the difference between a fun fact and a chain of custody violation. It's a big reason the character felt trustworthy, not just quirky. Her work outside the soundstage mattered too. She threw her energy behind veterans' causes, especially programs that pair trained service dogs with people living with PTSD or traumatic brain injuries. Those dogs aren't cheap to train. Think car-level money. And she helped raise it. It tracks with everything else about her: love people, love animals, and where those two paths cross, put your shoulder to the wheel. As the show's star rose, ratings followed. Season finales drew eye-popping numbers. There were years when the series outpaced shows that used to crush everything in its path. And some of the oddest success stories weren't even stories, like Abby Sciuto's signature caffeine bomb, the bright red drink with the exclamation point in its name. Originally, the plan was to show her downing caffeine pills, but production pivoted to a giant cup of neon Go Juice instead. The bit became iconic. It even sparked real-world promos and a bump in energy drink sales. Inside those cups, for Pauley Perrette, it was cranberry juice. That's the job. Make it look wild, keep it safe. What she didn't do was hand off the hard stuff. Pauley Perrette has serious claustrophobia, but when scenes called for narrow spaces, locked doors, morgue drawers, yep, those sets are tight, she muscled through. There's an episode where Abby Sciuto gets trapped during a hostage situation that turned her fear into a performance choice instead of a reason to step back. No body double. No bailing. Just grit. And because her creativity doesn't sit still, she played around with a low-key webcomic during her run. It was a nerdy love letter to labs and jokes, and one purple hippo posted under a pen name at first. Fans figured it out eventually, and the sweetest twist was where the money went. It revenue funneled to animal shelters. Quiet generosity, no press conference required. By 2011, Pauley Perrette's popularity wasn't just visible, it was measurable. Audience research companies that track likability and recognition had her near the very top for female TV stars, and she earned a nod in the record books for that wave of public affection. Say what you want about metrics. When regular people tell you again and again, "We like her," it means something, which makes what happened next all the more jarring. In 2016, a long-standing set routine took a sharp turn. According to multiple reports, Mark Harmon, series lead dog rescuer himself, brought his pit bull to set, as he'd done before without incident. This time, the dog bit a crew member, The injury was serious. Production paused, people were shaken, lawyers got involved, and the culture on set shifted. We're not here to referee anyone's intentions. Dogs, like people, can have bad days, but the fallout was heavy. Pauley Perrette made it clear she didn't want that dog back on the lot. When it did return, she pressed for a strict boundary. Her contract for the next season reportedly included a clause that she and Mark Harmon wouldn't share scenes. Crews split. Shooting schedules became a logistical headache. On screen, it looked fine. Off screen, it was two different worlds stitched together by editors and careful planning. Then came the tweets. In 2018, as she prepared to exit, Pauley Perrette started hinting, publicly, about being physically harmed and about a powerful machine trying to silence her. Not a glossy interview or a staged reveal, just raw lines on social media at odd hours, the way you type when your hands are shaking. In 2019, she stated flat out that she was terrified of Mark Harmon, that the nightmare stuck, that she would never return. At various points, she referenced filing safety complaints with HR over the course of a year. Those weren't fan theories, they were her words. And yes, people argued online about what it meant, who was right, and what we didn't know. Through it all, Mark Harmon stayed quiet publicly. Silence can be grace or strategy or both. It can also be infuriating if you're the one talking. There are reports that Pauley Perrette hired a private investigator to document safety issues on set and that she pushed for accountability at the network level. It's been alleged she reached a private settlement. Estimates have floated in the high seven-figure range. Around the same period, the company behind the show was already dealing with another high-profile misconduct payout on a different series, a reminder that corporate cultures don't exist in a vacuum. Do we have every sealed detail? Should allegations be treated as allegations? Always. But if you're trying to understand why an actor leaves a dream job after 15 years, the "I just needed a quieter life" line starts to sound a little too convenient. After the storm, Pauley Perrette tried a reset, a multi-camera comedy in 2020. It premiered strong. Nostalgia and curiosity can carry a pilot. But ratings slid as the season went on, reviews were lukewarm, and the show didn't get a second year. 2 months after the cancellation, she posted a colorful, jubilant message that boiled down to, "I'm free." She made it official. She was retired. Not a break, not a "see you in 6 months." Retired. Offers for guest arcs on other big shows came her way, single-episode cameos that pay well and keep your name warm, and she said no. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about living on her own terms. And then in 2021, everything got very real again. Early one September morning, Pauley Perrette woke up and the right side of her body felt wrong. Number foreign. She checked her face with her own hand, and it felt like she was touching someone else. That's when panic became action. She called. She went. Doctors confirmed an ischemic stroke. Huge. Dangerous, the kind that can change everything in the space of a sentence. Her voice vanished for a day and a half. When it came back, her first words were sarcastic because of course they were. But here's the thing that still gives me chills. Her rescue dog, Rosie, kept pawing at her, wouldn't let her sleep through the warning signs. In stroke care, minutes are everything. That dog gave her minutes. Say what you want about fate. I'll take an alarm clock with 4 legs. Recovery takes time, and she did the work. Speech therapy, motor rehab, quiet days, gratitude. A deeper turn toward faith practices that spoke to her, not the ones she felt she had to perform. She started visiting a Benedictine monastery on the California coast a couple times a year. It wasn't about labels, it was about silence and the kind of prayer that sounded like a conversation. Thank you for everything. Forgive me for everything. In that stillness, she said she felt guidance arrive in single words. Trust, not now. Like notes slipped under a door. That spiritual grounding didn't erase old wounds, past abuse. A violent attack in 2015 that left her shaken. The realities of living with PTSD and leaning on therapy, not as a dramatic reveal, but as hygiene, like brushing your teeth. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after something heavy, you know it's not a straight line. It's a spiral. You circle back to the pain from farther and farther away. Even off TV, Pauley Perrette kept creating. She signed on as an executive producer for a documentary about Studio One, the West Hollywood club that became a sanctuary for the LGBTQ community from the mid-'70s to the mid-'90s, especially during the darkest days of the AIDS crisis. The film brought voices like Bruce Vilanch and Chita Rivera together to bear witness. For Pauley Perrette, the why was simple: to make sure the joy and the history didn't get erased. And because her charity often happens off-camera, there's this. In 2015, a young fan named Christina, living with cancer, got to meet Pauley Perrette through a wish-granting organization. They laughed, took photos, did matching temporary tattoos. A few weeks later, the girl passed away. Quietly, without fanfare, Pauley Perrette covered the funeral and family travel. The only reason the world even heard about it was a relative's since-deleted post. She didn't need applause. She needed to do the right thing. Her boundaries didn't bend for money either. Twice, years apart, she turned down big offers from a certain men's magazine. We're talking high 6 figures to 7 figures to pose. In a culture that pressures women to monetize every inch of themselves, Pauley Perrette said no. She had young fans, she had a line she wasn't going to cross, end of story. And then there's the chapter that reads like the final beat of a movie. According to reports tied to probate filings, Pauley Perrette's estate plan focuses entirely on her causes. No family infighting, no squabbles over property. The story goes that she chose to leave her wealth to no-kill animal shelters and to organizations working to free the wrongfully convicted. If true, that split makes perfect sense. Animals and justice, the two pillars that held up so much of her life. There's even mention of a final request about how to scatter her ashes, half near dogs, half where rescues find a new start. Again, I can't confirm every sealed detail, and neither can you, but ask yourself, doesn't that sound exactly like her? So where does all this leave us? With a woman who built a character millions loved, then left the machine that made her famous to protect herself. With a survivor who turned pain into advocacy again and again. With a person who decided that peace and purpose beat clout every single time. And yeah, with a storyteller who, even in silence, keeps saying something profound. If you're here because you adored Abby Sciuto, you're not wrong. She was a once-in-a-generation TV creation. But if you're still listening because you're curious about Pauley Perrette, the real person, good. Because the truth behind the lab goggles is messy and complicated and brave. It involves HR complaints and hard boundaries, public posts that read like midnight cries, a dog named Rosie who became a furry EMT, and a heart big enough to hold both rescued animals and strangers who needed help. Now, I want you to imagine one more scene. It's quiet, no lights, no boom mics. Pauley Perrette sits with a notebook, scratches out a line that's simple and honest. Thank you for everything. Forgive me for everything. And then gets up to walk the dogs. Maybe she stops to help someone. Maybe she answers a call from a friend who's hurting. Maybe she just breathes. That's not quitting. That's choosing. And it might be the bravest decision of all. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. Your worth isn't proven by how long you stay in a room that hurts you. It's proven by how you walk out, who you help on the way, and what you build next. Pauley Perrette showed millions of people that you can be brilliant and kind and a little weird and still hold your ground. She reminded us that science and compassion are not opposites, that humor and trauma often live side by side, and that dogs, bless them, might actually save your life. If you've got a takeaway, let it be this. Pay attention to your alarms, even when they're just a small voice or a wet nose insisting something's wrong. Ask for help faster than you think you should. Document what matters, choose your piece, and don't wait for permission to reinvent yourself. Before we wrap, tell me in the comments what surprised you most about Pauley Perrette's journey. The student who wanted to profile criminals? The actor who turned a lab into a sanctuary? The advocate who did the right thing without a press release? I'm curious what hit you hardest. And hey, if you like stories that look past the glossy version to find the messy, meaningful truth, you know what to do. Tap like, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs a little courage today, and ring that bell so you don't miss what's next. Thanks for hanging out with me. Be safe, be kind, and if you can, rescue something with pause.